Hi, welcome to the channel once again, and today I'm going to be taking you on how to begin your sewing journey. This is a new year and this is such a perfect time for you to start learning a new hobby or to begin sewing in general. So today I'm going to be sharing with you the very first thing and showing you practical ways in which you can start that. Alright, let's begin by learning about some of the tools and materials you will need to begin your sewing journey. Well, sewing is very easy if you have the right tools and the right materials, and there are a million tools. There are 1,000 tools that you could use in sewing. But what are those tools that you necessarily need? Because in starting a new skill and wanting to have a new hobby, I know it's really easy for you to get in your head about the tools and the materials you need. You might like to get all the tools necessary, but what I need to tell you is the major most important tools that you need to get. First of all, you need a measuring tape. That's the sewing tape, and you see how this tape comes. You see that it is measured in inches on one side up to 60 inches and on the other side in centimeters. Some people are more adept to using the centimeters to take measurements. Some are more adept in using the inches. I'm more used to using the inches side of the measuring tape to take measurements. Another thing you need is a pair of sharp fabric scissors. This scissors has to be sharp. Whenever you go to get your sewing supplies, always look for a fabric scissors, and a fabric scissors should be solely for the purpose of cutting clothes and cutting fabric. You should never use these scissors to cut paper. You should never use these scissors to cut hair or whatever. These scissors are only meant for cloth cutting or fabric cutting. The next thing you need is a thread. There are different kinds of threads. There are monofilament threads, there are nylon threads, there are polyester threads, cotton threads, but you should be able to get an all-purpose thread for you to start. As you get used to sewing and as you practice more, you know what thread is good for what fabric, and you continue to learn as you go. But just for starting, you need an all-purpose thread to start. So here's mine. Another important thing that you cannot start your sewing project without is a sewing machine. Well, there are different kinds of sewing machine. This right here is a vintage sewing machine. So usually it works manually. Either you use it to sew manually or you attach a motor to it, like you can see right here. You attach a motor to it and you use electricity to sew. There are also different kinds of sewing machine, regardless of the type that you have. There's the industrial sewing machine, which is used for heavy duty work. There is a tabletop electric sewing machine, which is a more home designed for use at home. Then there are also different kinds of sewing machine depending on the purpose and the use of those machines. There are machines that are used to weave clothes and finish the edges of garments and things like that. There are machines that are specifically for buttonholes, but right now you don't need to bother yourself about that. You just need to get a sewing machine that works. It could be a simple tabletop sewing machine, Singer or whatever brand it is that you're using, or an industrial sewing machine. Majority of the process of threading the needle and beginning to sew is the same across most machines. So today I'm going to be using my vintage Singer sewing machine to teach you guys. Another thing that you need that you absolutely cannot do without is a sewing machine needle. So you need to find out the particular size that your sewing machine uses, and you can find this out by going to any sewing store. And you can find this out by going to any sewing store or any tailoring store or whoever sells sewing machines, and then tell them the name of your sewing machine, the brand of your sewing machine, and they will let you know what size you need your sewing needles to be. So my sewing needles usually come in size 16. So I have a pack of size 16 sewing machine needles right here. There are also hand needles, and that is specifically for sewing with hand. You don't use those hand needles to sew with machine. There's specific needles for sewing machine and there's specific needles for hand sewing. Another thing you need is a pair of tailor's chalk. It could be any chalk just to use in marking your fabric. I don't know if you can see this up close, but this is what my chalk looks like, and this is my tailor's chalk that I'll use in marking the fabric for today. As a beginner, you would also need pins to keep your fabric in place as you sew, because when you're starting to sew, everything might be a little overwhelming. So if you're able to get pins to use to hold your fabric together before you start sewing, it will be really good. So like I said earlier, there are 1,000 tools that you can buy and have at your disposal for your sewing project, but these are the absolutely important tools that you need. Aside this, every other thing can be overlooked and it can be worked around. So since you've got your tools ready, let's get started. So I'm going to fix my needle. If your needle already comes prefixed or you need to fix it, all you just need to do is loosen this part here, right here. Don't know if you can see that. Loosen it, put your needle in, and then tighten it back. Make sure that the edge that is facing the outside, that is the right side, is that part that has a dent in it. So you just fix your needle like this. Just fix your needle, make sure it's facing the eye of the needle. The hole, that is the hole in the needle, which is called the eye of the needle, is facing out. Make sure it's facing direct to this side. Don't let it not face, it shouldn't be facing back, it shouldn't be facing you in front, it should be facing the right. Is this my right hand side? Yeah, the right hand side. So make sure you secure it tightly at this point. So every sewing machine comes with the bobbin and the bobbin holder. In Nigeria, we're used to calling this the reeler and the shuttle. At least that's how I learned. Time has advanced, guys, so let's start calling it the name that it's supposed to be called. Okay, so this is the bobbin. This is the bobbin. This one that has the holes where you put the thread around is the bobbin, while this one is the bobbin holder. And every single machine in this world comes with these two things. They come with the bobbin and the bobbin holder, and all you need to do is to load the bobbin up with thread, and I'm going to be doing that right now. So both your hands have to do this, while you can use the thread, put the thread, use your teeth to hold the thread. It doesn't matter. Okay, so hold this length of the thread, write it on the listening. Hold the start. Then see your bobbin has a place where it's slit a bit. Put the thread through it. Put the thread through that point that is slit. Then drag your thread so that it comes out by this hole here. You can see. So go ahead and take your scissors and then just cut the excess. So you're going to load this already loaded bobbin in the bobbin holder into your sewing machine. So you just put this into your bobbin, into your sewing machine.
Well now.
So the next thing we are going to do is try to load the sewing machine needle with this blue thread. So this is how you load. Majority of the sewing machines have the same way of fixing the thread to the needle. So this is how to do it. you put, so this pin here is to hold your thread while sewing. So you just put your thread right on it and take it one time around your sewing machine. Look at this pot here. Let the thread go through it. Look at this tension area here. Look at this tension area here. The thread is going to go round, so you need to put it through. Hold it down, put it through so that it can pass through that side. Take it above this iron here. Then look at this thread take up lever. This one, it has a hole in it. Let your thread pass through it from the back, not from the front. Take it, when it goes through that tension area, let it go through the back. So you can see this is where we are now. So now what's left now is to fix it through the needle eye. So this is the thread. So you just bend over a little, try to get the needle into that eye of, from the back, from the back, you know, we are coming all the way here. So from the back, try to get the thread into the needle's eye. Beautifully, I've done it. So here it is. So we fixed the upper thread, we fixed the lower thread. So now what's left with is to connect those two threads, the lower thread and the upper thread. So you are just going to hold the excess of the upper thread and then use your hand wheel, bring it down a little, and then once the needle has gone in once, pull out the thread. This might take you maybe 2 or 3 times before you get it because you are fairly new at this, but that's okay. Just take your time in doing it. So once you've done that, you can raise up the back of this point. You can raise it up so that you put a fabric here. So in order to begin sewing at all, you need to get a fabric that is going to be very easy for you. Mostly we advise that if it's your first time and you're due to sewing, you start with a cotton fabric. So if you don't have access to a cotton fabric or you cannot identify a cotton fabric, go and look for a material that is plain, without any beads, without any sequin whatsoever, without any decoration, just a plain material. And it shouldn't be a stretchy material, a plain material that does not stretch, because stretchy materials can get really tricky and you need to be able to build, you need to get better at your skill before you can work with stretchy materials. So go and look for a material that you can use to practice. It can be a plain material that does not stretch. I have this white fabric that is not stretchy, and that's what I'll be using for today's tutorial. So the next thing we need to do, guys, is to learn to sew straight lines. So the first thing I would admonish, you can see the length of this my fabric. So you can see how the fabric is, I fold it into 2, so you have to fold it into 2 in order to start. You folded it into 2. So the first thing you are going to teach yourself, and the first thing you're going to start practicing to do will be to learn how to sew in perfectly straight lines, because straight lines are going to make up majority of the things that you're going to be sewing, especially if even if you're sewing a dress or whatever. You need to know how to sew in straight lines. So take your fabric and practice. So once you put it under, you put your fabric right under and drop this part of it. So start slowly. Once you start, put the needle in, start slowly. Always do a back stitch. So always do a back stitch before you start, right when you start your sewing and right at the end. So let's do this. I'm running at this speed because I'm really used to it, but if you're starting new, you might want to go slower. The slower the better. so that your needle doesn't break, your thread doesn't cut, and you know. So try as much as possible to get your line straight. Remember, this challenge is to sew in straight lines, so take your time, don't rush. Take your time, don't rush it. Always back stitch at the end of your, then you pull it out. Use your hand wheel to roll it out, and then cut the thread off from the fabric. Can you see my seams? Your seam might not be able to be this straight as you're starting out, but over time it will get straight. Look at how. Do this a couple of times over. Do this 2-3 times over to get perfect. The more you, the best advice that you can get with sewing is that you need to learn every single time. So the more you learn and the more you practice it, the more you get better at doing it. You know, if you've done this once, do it over and over again. Do it over and over again, and it only gets better. To get smoother, you'll be able to run your machine faster, and your lines will get straight even more. This is really the first exercise that you need to learn. Let's go for another round. So you can see I've done another straight line on this. So another thing you should practice after you've mastered sewing in straight line will be to sew in curved lines. But you need to learn how to sew in straight lines first. Master that first before you learn how to sew curved lines. So let me do a little tutorial on that. Let me do a little sewing on that so that you can see. Master how to sew in curved lines, because you're going to be sewing armholes of clothes, you're going to be sewing neckline, and most often at times these areas are curved in circular way. So let's practice. No. So don't curve the line here. Let's go for another. Continue to practice. Your skill will get better. So the more you practice, the more you can get perfectly curved lines, the more you can get perfectly straight lines. I hope you've learned something new today. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and leave any questions that you have in the comments, and I'll respond to them. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one. Bye.